Hello everyone and welcome to another Total War Warhammer online commentary. In this game I'm going to be playing the Greenskins led by Dr. Doom himself. And guys, we're going to be facing off against the Empire. So let's jump right into this game and take a look at some of the army compositions. We can go from there. So for my front line, I do have a combination of black orcs and regular orc boys. So orc boys for their cost actually aren't bad against the Empire. They do have 28 melee attack and 28 melee defense, which isn't bad, but on top of that they do have 34 weapon strength, so they're going to hit exceptionally hard against lightly armored targets like spearmen and halberds, and even against flagellants they do okay for their cost. So I definitely like mixing in some of these guys, and again I'm always of the opinion that you need to go wide against the Empire. If you just have like a few elite infantry, the Empire has a lot of tools to really punish that. They have good artillery, he does have a steam tank over there, but on top of that they also do have nets of amnitox, so they can net down your elite infantry and get a lot of value out of their guns. So you really need to kind of counterplay that by going wide, in my opinion. On top of that, I do have some black orcs in the middle, and you can see that's kind of how my entire line is. It's orc boys, and then black orcs, and then orc boys. So the black orcs are there to deal with greatswords, and they are immune to psychology as well. And the Empire does have a lot of tools to actually cause terror. They have steam tanks, and most Empire players are going to bring an Imperial Griffin with a General of the Empire or a Boris Todbringer or something like that. So it's very important, in my opinion, to have some immunity to psychology in the front line. So you guys can see that right there. But yeah, they're pretty solid. They can beat flagellants, they can beat spearmen, and all those lightly armored infantry don't really have enough armor-piercing damage to get through their 110 armor. So definitely good to have those guys. So I decided to go pretty artillery heavy. I do have the Hammer of Gork right here, and I also do have a Doom Diver Catapult. So I'm hoping that I can really kind of focus down as crossbowmen and silver bullets and other high-value targets in that respect. And Doom Divers, I think they might have gotten changed a while back, but regardless, they used to be really good against missile units, and I still think they are. They don't have as much armor-piercing as like a Hammer of Gork or Goblin Rock Labbers do, but nonetheless, against the Empire, it should do the trick. In the back line, I do have Durusty Heirs mixed in with two groups of Goblin Archers to have a nice little firing squad. I do have the Small Wah. The Little Wah. So the Little Wah is incredibly good. You definitely want to bring Sneaky Steel in against the Empire. It heavily neuters their healing abilities. If they start off with like 14 or 15 wins of magic, they're not going to get much more value out of that. We do also have the Itchy Nuisance just in case. But most of my magic is going to be coming from Azag, who I've coined to be called Dr. Doom. But he does have the, what's it called up here? The Fate of Buna, and he also has the Spirit Leech. So he's going to be a pretty good duelist against the General of the Empire. And honestly, he's in my opinion, I think in a head-to-head, he would probably do pretty well for himself. He does have poison attacks and 480 weapon strength with pretty good armor piercing values and a charge bonus of 80 compared to the charge. Well, I guess the General of the Empire is 90 charge bonus. That's pretty tough. So the melee attack on this guy, the General of the Empire, is 40 and 30 compared to the 50 and 20. So a little bit of a trade-off there. In the back, I do have a Orc Boar Boy Biggins, decent against Empire, anti-large, armor piercing. They'll obviously lose to most Empire Cav, but still for their cost, they do pretty well. I do also have the Broken Tusk Mob here. So I like to mix in the Broken Tusk Mob to give a little bit of encouragement to my other Orc Boars, and on top of that, they just have better stats. They have 90 armor themselves compared to the 55 here. So if the Empire decides to go with Reiksguard or non-armor piercing Cav, you're really going to get your money's worth out of that 90 armor. So for my opponent, he does have a General of the Empire with the Potion and Steam Tank. Steam Tanks are one of those units that I haven't seen as much lately, but when Total War Warhammer first came out, these were an incredibly popular pick against the Greenskins because they would terror out a lot of the Greenskin front lines. So they do have those, and on top of that, he has Spearmen and Flagellants, so relatively cheap front line with the Sigmar Sons. I think does he have the Tattersouls? It doesn't look like he does. But yeah, just kind of a mixed mash front line of Sigmar Sons, a lot of unbreakable stuff. In the back here, he does have a single group of greatswords, which you see quite a bit, but I do have the black orcs to deal with them. He does have two crossbows in the back. He's probably going to try and take out my Rusty Heirs with those guys. Some spears protecting his flank, and in the forest, this is where he's got most of his heat. So he does have a group of Demogryph Knights with halberds back here. He does have a Jade Wizard with the Dwellers below, so hopefully my black orcs won't be experiencing that. And last but not least, he does have some Reiksguards. Reiksguard definitely aren't bad against Greenskins either. They can really charge into that front line and just hammer orc boys, and even do okay against black orcs. So guys, without further ado, let the games begin. So you can see Azag over here, Dr. Doom is flying in there, and he's going to be using a Fate of Buna on the Greatsword. So the Greatswords are a fairly expensive unit. I don't think they're, as far as Greatsword units go, one of the more cost-effective units, but nonetheless, I figured if I could get rid of them and really punish them, I could then, take advantage of my Black Orcs and his lack of armor piercing. So I get that Fate of Buna in there, and I also am targeting it with the Hammer of Gork, is shooting in there on those Greatswords, and you can see my Doom Diver is doing good work against those crossbowmen. So I do pull back here. I didn't want to take that free fire, and he was kind of checking me with that General of the Empire. But yeah, you can see these guys are having a really bad time. The Hammer of Gork's coming in there, pounding them. And the Doom Divers, let's get you guys a little slow-mo shot of the Doom Divers. It's always pretty funny to see these guys in action. So they come in there and get some nice shots on, I think they actually missed and hit some of those spearmen, but regardless, they're getting in there, and they should be able to rout off the crossbows after, another 5 or 6 volleys. So in the front line, we're about to have our engagement. The Orc Boys are going to engage against the Sigmar Sons, which isn't a bad trade. I mean, the Sigmar Sons will win because they have exceptional melee defense and melee attack, but they should do okay for themselves. So these other Orc Boys are going to charge against these Flagellants, and I'm going to get that charge bonus, whereas my opponent did not. He was flat-footed. just like boxing. So we get in there and we do pretty well for ourselves. 86 models down to 83, and it's a relatively even trade, even with the steam tank kind of pushing in there. So this is where a little King Kong versus Godzilla action is going to take place. You can see Azag is battling the General of the Empire. So I think he actually got the charge. I was like pathing somewhere else, so I took a little bit more initial shock damage. You can see he actually pops his potion of toughness, so he does have that on me, and I'm taking crossbow fire. So a lot of things going, against Azag here, but for the most part, he's doing pretty well and trading very evenly. Even with that potion of toughness, he gets a great armor-piercing attack there. Things are looking pretty good up in this guy. Even. I wouldn't mind trading even against the Empire, to be honest here. So my Rusty Arrows have been terror-routed by the steam tank. My Orc Boars in the back have intercepted the Reichsguard and some of these other guys, and the Broken Tusk Mob also has the support of some nasty Skulkers. So it's kind of hard to notice these guys, and I do use the Smoke Bomb, which is going to trap down a lot of his units, and I think I have enough here to win this fight, although there is a steam tank relatively close by, which has shut down some of my Gabo missiles, and in the meantime, you can see my Doom Divers continuing to just pepper those crossbows, and they're taking a bit of work. This one group back here, you can see they're almost routing, and this is why you go wide against the Empire. You always want to be able to outflank their front line, and, I have my Orc Boys chasing back here, and they're going to get into these crossbows, and that's like a big kind of a, punishing mechanic for my opponent. The Black Orcs were able to win here in the middle, and they'll be pushing over here shortly. And you can see our Lords traded very evenly. I have 500 HP, but guys, he is shattered. He used his potion. He had to use a lot of resources, and Azag will probably come back and have another Spirit Leech. He's at 1 leadership right now and should stabilize. So definitely some good stuff. So in the pits, you can see the Orc Boys are still fighting against the Flagellants and the Spears, and doing pretty well for themselves. And I'm definitely of the opinion that Orc Boys are not bad in this matchup. Over here, they're fighting against some Flagellants as well. And in the high ground, you can see the Black Orcs just completely smashed on those Spearmen. A little bit sloppy on my micro, just kind of letting him overchase a little bit. But nonetheless, in the front line, it looks like most of his stuff is collapsing. He has pulled back his Demogryph Knights with Halberds because they were losing that engagement against my Boars, I think. Or no, actually, the steam tank came in there and actually terror-routed a lot of my stuff off. But regardless, I do get a decent little surround against the steam tank. I do have the Broken Tusk Mob coming in, and these Orc Boars are steady. It's 36 models, so they should be able to do okay. And definitely, good against steam tanks because they do have anti-large and armor piercing. A lot of my missiles are coming back, and you can see that firing line just perpetually just hammering my opponent. So he's taking that Doom Diver fire, which is, the original Greenskin anti-large, just shooting goblins at people. But yeah, we're getting in there. The Reichsguard are kind of getting dragged down. They're shaken. My Black Orcs are also coming on the flank, so these Flagellants and what's left of his front line is definitely going to get smashed pretty good right here. Regardless, the bounce of power is still relatively even though we both kind of, took a beating on our Lord. Azag is indeed back, so I thought it was a little bit of a risky move, but I decided, hey, the steam tank's low enough, it's isolated, it doesn't have the support of anything else. Let's go in there and just kind of, I think you could actually poison it, which is pretty funny. So it looks like, I think I was being targeted with something, I'm not sure what. Because, yeah, that little kind of aura thing. But anyways, Azag's going to be charging in here and helping out with the steam tank in just a moment. You can see in the front line, my opponent gets a really good Dwellers below, right on top of all these Black Orcs who are just finishing off the last few Flagellants, and it's going to do some pretty massive damage. You can see they're at 28 models right now, and she's dragging them into the pits, doing a ton of HP damage. I try and waddle out of it, but it was too little too late. I just basically took, pretty devastating hits there. Nonetheless, he just does have some great swords left over here. He also has some Reichsguard coming in to get a heroic charge in the fourth quarter, so these Black Orcs are going to be sent flying. But let's go ahead and zoom up here and take an overarching look at the battlefield. So he does have 2 groups of crossbows. He has his Jade Wizard, so he's going to be able to kind of reform a firing line here, whereas my back line's a little bit wild. I do have my Doom Diver online still, and the Hammer of Gork has plenty of ammunition. Several groups of Goblin Archers over here, which are kind of teeing off in the steam tank, which is nice, and it looks like Azog is actually able to get in there and kill it. And again, he has very good armor-piercing attacks, and the poison is also quite nice. The Reichsguard, though, continue to be a menace, just charging around and kind of running down my poor Goblins. It's always a little bit sad seeing this, but also funny. So you can see the Goblins go flying, and the Reichsguard get in there and do some pretty good shock damage. Man, that was hit really hard for how few Reichsguard were left. So the Orc Boys and this Goblin Shaman are going to avenge their kin, and I believe, yeah, these are just regular Orc Boy Biggins. They should be able to easily clean up those 20 Reichsguard. So he's just kind of going around and trying to clean up the last of my pieces here in the back and just get whatever value he can. And it looks like the rest of his forces, these great swords and all these guys are taking a ton of fire from the Hammer of Gork and my Doom Diver. And then my Broken Tusk Mob and some Black Orcs and Orc Boys are kind of chasing up there to make sure those guys stay off the battlefield. So I actually have 1 Black Orc right here. Oh, look at this guy. He's just a straight thug. Just 1 Black Orc. He's only shaken. He's good. He's got 1 HP, no problem. So, yeah, Azag's in pretty good shape. He's just kind of flying around. Looks like we almost had a little bit of friendly fire there, and I think that's going to be all she wrote for the Empire. So, an incredibly fun game. I like the army competition. It's a little bit kind of risky to go 2 artillery pieces, but thankfully he didn't really have the tools to punish me for it. So I was able to get really good value and just kind of hammer down a lot of his range stuff. No pun. I guess the pun is intended. But, yeah, steam tanks, are traditionally pretty tough for the Greenskins, but at least we do have the Rusty Arrows. Because when the game first came out before Regiments of Renown, it was pretty tough. But now that we have the Rusty Arrows, that can kind of sunder their armor and allow you to get some really good pressure. And of course, Azag is a really good tool against a steam tank. Spirit Leech isn't bad for doing single target DPS, and on top of that, he does have good AP values. So yeah, I like my opponent's army. This is kind of the traditional front line. The Sigmar Sons and Flagellants and Tattersouls are usually what you see. It's unbreakable and allows your other things to really do the heavy lifting. But thankfully we were able to really get around his flank and punish those missile units with my artillery pieces. So that went pretty well for us. But very well played to my opponent, War Slipper. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder. And hopefully you guys enjoyed that Greenskin cast. Have an excellent night and take care.